In 1959, a sharp-tongued lawyer sits down to dinner in Omaha and quietly changes the history of investing forever. His name is Charlie Munger, and the young man across the table is a 28-year-old Warren Buffett. Almost everyone knows the name Buffett, yet very few have ever studied the man who reshaped his mind. Without Charlie Munger, there is no modern Berkshire Hathaway and no $100 billion Buffett fortune. This is the story of how a poker-playing lawyer became the most important investor you have never truly studied. Charlie Munger is born in Omaha in 1924, and as a teenager, he actually works at Buffett's grandfather's grocery store. He drops out of college to serve in World War II, training as a meteorologist for the Army. Despite never finishing his undergraduate degree, he talks his way into Harvard Law School and graduates near the top. He builds a successful law practice in California, but he quickly realizes that billing by the hour will never make him rich. So on the side, he starts developing real estate projects and turns his first serious profits into investment capital. By his late 30s, Charlie Munger has made his first $1 million entirely on his own. Then in 1959, a mutual friend insists that Munger meet a rising young investor back in his hometown of Omaha. Buffett and Munger talk for hours, and within minutes they realize they think in almost exactly the same way. Buffett urges Munger to quit law entirely and become a full-time investor. Munger launches his own investment partnership, and from 1962 to 1975 he compounds money at about 19% a year. That track record crushes the market, but Munger's real gift is not picking stocks at all. His real gift is a way of thinking he calls a latticework of mental models. He borrows the biggest ideas from physics, biology, psychology, and economics and stacks them into one tool kit. His most famous rule is just 2 words: invert. Always invert. Instead of asking how to succeed, Munger asks how people fail, and then he simply avoids those exact mistakes. He studies the psychology of human misjudgment, cataloging 25 ways the mind fools itself into bad decisions. And slowly this lawyer's way of thinking begins to reshape how Warren Buffett himself invests. But Munger's road is brutal. In the 1973 and 1974 bear market, his own partnership loses more than half its value. Many of his investors panic and flee, convinced that this brilliant lawyer has finally lost his touch. But Munger refuses to sell his best holdings, gritting his teeth through the very worst of the storm. When the market finally recovers, his fund roars back and finishes far ahead of where it ever started. That near-death experience burns one lesson into him. Temperament matters far more than raw intelligence. The big money, he learns, is not made in the buying or selling, but in the patient, painful waiting. Munger also preaches the iron power of incentives. Warning: show me the incentive and I will show you the outcome. He worships compound interest, calling it the single most powerful and underrated force in all of finance. He insists on staying strictly inside your circle of competence and calmly ignoring everything that lies outside it, and he treats reading as oxygen, claiming he never met a wise person who did not read constantly. For decades, Munger also runs his own company, Wesco Financial, as a miniature version of Berkshire Hathaway. He uses Wesco as a laboratory, testing his ideas on insurance, savings, and steady cash-generating businesses. And despite his enormous wealth, he keeps his life deliberately simple and almost stubbornly frugal. He lives for more than 60 years in the same modest Los Angeles house he could have replaced 1,000 times over. Money, to Munger, was never the point. It was simply the scorecard for thinking clearly over a long life. For years, Buffett had followed his teacher, Benjamin Graham, buying dirt-cheap, mediocre companies for less than they were worth. Munger argues this is a mistake and pushes one simple, radical idea into Buffett's head. It is far better, Munger insists, to buy a wonderful business at a fair price than a fair business at a wonderful price. In 1972, Munger finally convinces a reluctant Buffett to pay $25 million for See's Candies. On paper, they are wildly overpaying for a small chocolate company that earns only $4 million a year. But over the decades, See's quietly sends Berkshire more than $2 billion in pure profit. That single deal proves Munger right and rewires Buffett's investing brain for good. From that point on, Berkshire chases great businesses with deep moats, not just statistical bargains. In 1978, Charlie Munger officially becomes the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. For the next 45 years, he sits beside Buffett as the sharp, blunt voice that kills bad ideas on sight. His most famous catchphrase at meetings becomes a simple, devastating, "I have nothing to add." But when Munger does speak, he hands the world some of the sharpest investing wisdom ever recorded. He runs a small newspaper company called the Daily Journal, almost as a hobby on the side. Then the 2008 financial crisis hits, and bank stocks are crashing toward what looks like zero. While everyone else panics and sells, Munger does the exact opposite and backs up the truck. He pours the Daily Journal's spare cash into beaten-down bank stocks at the bottom of the crash. Within a few years, that contrarian bet roughly triples the company's investment portfolio. He also champions an unknown Chinese car maker called BYD, betting big when almost no one believed in it. Berkshire invests about $230 million into BYD, and that stake later balloons to several billion. Right up into his late 90s, Charlie Munger keeps hunting for great businesses to own. He preaches patience, brutal honesty, and the rare discipline of sitting still and doing absolutely nothing. The big money, he says again and again, is never in the buying or the selling, but in the waiting. In November 2023, Charlie Munger dies just 34 days before his 100th birthday. He leaves behind a personal fortune of more than $2 billion. And something far more valuable, he leaves behind a way of thinking that an entire generation of investors now tries to copy. So what can an ordinary investor actually steal from Charlie Munger's century of hard-won wisdom? First, spend less time chasing winners and far more time simply avoiding obvious, fatal mistakes. Second, pay a fair price for a truly wonderful business and then refuse to ever sell it. Third, build your own latticework of mental models and never stop learning new ideas every single day. And finally, when a once-in-a-decade panic arrives, have the courage to be greedy while everyone else is terrified. Fifth, keep both your life and your portfolio brutally simple and let compounding do its slow, relentless work. Sixth, avoid envy, resentment, and self-pity, which Munger called 3 of the surest known paths to misery. Seventh, spend each and every day trying to be just a little bit wiser than you were the day before. He warned that a brilliant mind paired with a bad temperament is simply a fortune waiting to be destroyed. He mocked the urge to trade constantly, joking that the real fortune is made by sitting patiently and waiting. He told people to honestly find what they are bad at and then carefully arrange their lives to avoid it. He believed knowing the exact edge of your own competence is far more valuable than the competence itself. His rule on compounding was blunt: find a long runway and then never interrupt it unnecessarily. Take a simple idea, he said, and then take that idea absolutely seriously for your entire life. Above all, Munger treated clear, cold rationality as a moral duty, not merely a useful business skill. These were never abstract slogans to him. They were the exact mental tools that quietly built billions. And the best part is that they are freely available to anyone patient and humble enough to actually use them. Charlie Munger never needed to be the most famous investor in the room. He simply made himself the smartest, and then handed that thinking to the man beside him. And in doing so, a poker-playing lawyer from Omaha quietly helped build one of the greatest fortunes in history.